Once you have annotated the question and brainstormed what evidence you will use, including identifying the commonalities within your supporting details, then you are ready to write the master thesis of your essay. There are 3 main steps to take when writing your thesis. It is important that you complete all 3 steps in order to ensure your thesis properly sets up your essay. First, start by restating the question in sentence form. Next, add the specifics. This includes the how or the why. Finally, proofread and edit for clarity. This usually means tightening the sentence so it is less wordy. Now, let's work through this process for the sample prompt we have been working with. To what extent were the reforms of the Progressive Era successful at resolving social and political concerns of the time? Confine your answer to the time period between 1890 and 1915. Our first step is to restate the question in sentence form. Progressive Era reforms were successful to some extent in resolving social and political concerns between 1890 and 1915. It's critical that you never stop here. Many times students, without realizing it, will flower the sentence up with excellent vocabulary words. But restating the question doesn't actually answer the question. So we start here, but then we must move to step 2. Step 2 says we must now add the specifics, the how or the why. Looking at our restated question, we now need to determine which parts of the sentence need to be clarified. Read the sentence and ask yourself, where can I explain more by answering how or why? Progressive Era reforms were successful to some extent in resolving social and political concerns between 1890 and 1915. In this essay, we have to clarify how, or to what extent, these reforms were successful. We also should clarify how or why they address social or political concerns. To answer the first part, we should re-examine our evidence. In the last video, we applied the essay topic to each of the pieces of evidence, and we asked the question of whether or not it was successful as a progressive reform. We discovered that most of the reforms during this period were more successful at the state level, and there was limited success at the national level. This commonality that we found is half of our thesis. We'll want to incorporate it into our thesis statement. Secondly, we will want to clarify the other unclear part of our restated prompt. You'll need to look for patterns of how and why these reforms address social or political concerns of the period. This analysis is important to your essay. It should take about 3 minutes for you to do this, but it will give you something to write about in your essay so that your essay is not just about information, but that it also makes a clear point. For instance, socially, you'll want to look through these terms again. What do they have in common about how they tried to address social ills? After analyzing it, you would find that all of them seem to address the conditions of the common worker or laborer, whether at work or their living conditions and home life. Then move to the political column and do the same thing. Analyze. What do these reforms have in common about how they tried to address political ills of the period? After analyzing it, you would come to the conclusion that they are all seeking to redistribute power away from political parties and elected officials. Now we need to add these 3 ideas into the original restated sentence. It's okay if it's wordy. We'll address that in the next step. Just get the ideas down. Our 3 ideas to include: reforms were more successful at the state level. Social reforms addressed conditions of workers. And political reforms tried to redistribute power away from political parties and elected officials. Here was our original restatement. Progressive Era reforms were successful to some extent in resolving social and political concerns between 1890 and 1915. Let's replace the selected phrases with our more detailed ideas. This is what we get. Progressive Era reforms were more successful at the state level than the national level in resolving the social ills of the worker and the political concerns of excessive power held by the political parties and the elected officials between 1890 and 1915. So we're ready for step 3. This sentence is super wordy. We need to tighten it and make it more clear. Revise your sentence to make it more concise. A great thesis is one that very simply states the ideas in a clear, cohesive manner. This is where you can also take liberties with revising some of the other phrases in the sentence. Now let's take a look at our final thesis after we've worked to tighten it. Progressive Era reforms were ultimately more successful at the state level, as they attempted to resolve the social ills confronting workers and to redistribute political power away from the parties between 1890 and 1915. Following these steps will be critical to writing an excellent, clear thesis that includes analysis. You should be able to do all of this in just a few minutes. With a great thesis, writing a great essay is possible. Be sure you ask your teacher where they prefer that you place the thesis. Most teachers will say it should go as the last sentence of your introductory paragraph, guiding your reader into the essay at large. But some teachers may prefer something different. With these 3 steps, you are well on your way to writing a great comprehensive and detailed essay that does more than just give information, but also makes an argument.